What does the future look like for Indiana with Curt Cignetti? Is Curt Cignetti just another Mel Tucker? Is Curt Cignetti, something bigger than that, where we could see him being in the playoffs again, maybe 1 or 2 years from now? Or is Curt Cignetti just kind of like a Kirk Ferentz? The team's probably going to be pretty good, 7-5, 8-4 most years in the Big Ten. Maybe they overachieved this year a little bit more than they probably should have, but with a tougher schedule next year, I mean, I think no doubt Indiana's probably a 6-6 or better team every single year. I don't know if I see them get into the playoffs again, because I think they were aided a bit by an easier schedule this year. Not taking anything away, I'm just saying that aided them and helped them. But I could see Curt Cignetti being a coach that gets this team to 7-5, 8-4 wins, kind of like a Kirk Ferentz. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, and I think in the New World Big Ten, I think he can certainly do that. I think the issue is, can he have the same type of success in the transfer portal that he did this past year? Because, I mean, that was a big part of it. Over 30 players came. He had a lot of personal relationships. Plus, he was able to identify guys like Curtis Rourke. And so can he do that again, where he gets some of the best and brightest from the group of five, cherry picks a few, top stars, maybe in the Power Four. And I think that's one of the benefits of being in the playoff this year, is it becomes, hey, we got to the playoff this year. Now we just need a few pieces to kind of get over the hump. The problem though is going to be the attrition. A lot of people they're losing a lot of people. The schedule's a lot tougher next year. They go to Iowa, they go to Oregon, they go to Penn State, and they host games against Wisconsin and UCLA and Michigan State, all of whom I think are, UCLA, Michigan State, and Wisconsin, I think are all going to be better next year. And they got to host Illinois, which Illinois is no joke right now. So You're talking about a very different schedule next year. No Michigan or Ohio State, but you do get, you got to go to Autzen, which that's not fun. So very different road trip there. Sorry, I'm also tired, clearly. Oh, you're on mute, JR.
I thought I unmuted myself. Sorry. I was just going to say, when I looked at that schedule for the very first time, I felt like I saw 3 for sure, like, losses. Not like 3 games I think are for sure, but because of the schedule difficulty, I feel like the floor of that schedule is 3 losses, and the ceiling of it is probably, what? Or not the floor. The ceiling of that schedule is 3 losses. The floor of that schedule is probably 7-5, right?
Yeah.
And so this is still going to be a team that's a bowl team. I do believe that, especially with the talent they're bringing in, right? Yeah. Right now they have a prediction for them to land Roman Hemby from Maryland. Now, Roman Hemby didn't have the best year this year, but it's also kind of what you get when, Mike Locksley is your head coach, and he loves to throw the ball as much as he does. And guess what? You'll never believe it. Who are the 2 players that Maryland has brought in through the transfer portal? What positions do they both play, Zach? Come on. You know this.
Running back?
No, wide receiver.
They
both play wide receiver.
Wide receiver. Oh,
sorry. A guy from Tennessee and a guy from Oklahoma who played wide receiver.
Are they going to play tackle?
I guess, like, going to convert him to defensive tackle and offensive tackle. But no, he's going to the FCS for his offensive tackles again. That's what he's doing. Anyway, but like he's bringing in Roman Hemby, Lee Beebe Jr. I think he's probably bringing him in as well. He's from UAB. Not, probably not the guy that Roman Hemby is, but still a pretty good back. We'll see what happens there. And then he still needs to find his quarterback, whether that's going to be somebody from the transfer portal, whether it's going to be Taven Jackson. I think Taven Jackson, you could probably go with Taven Jackson. I mean, he's athletic enough. He doesn't have the arm and the decision-making that Curtis Rourke has, but, I mean, you saw this season when he came in that Washington game. I mean, it wasn't the best in the world, but this is still a highly rated recruit, right? Now, you could always bring in Fernando Mendoza. That's another option to possibly come in, but the way I look at it, I don't think Curt Cignetti is going to go into a season unprepared at quarterback. I think he's every single year he's going to come in ready to go at quarterback, and I think that is the difference from somebody like Mel Tucker, where Bo Prabula, yeah, Joe R. Bo Prabula, bring him in too. He did come visit, so we'll
Yep.
see.
I think that's a
Um,
possibility.
but I think that's what makes Curt Cignetti stand out from a Mel Tucker. Mel Tucker was so much so like, just give me bodies, just get me guys in the room. Whereas Curt Cignetti, I think he understands the dynamic of his team and what he needs better than Mel Tucker and builds it. And he's more experienced than Mel Tucker, right?
Yep.
Like that's the thing I keep saying when people say, "Oh, he's just Mel Tucker." It's like, well, Mel Tucker coached for 1 year at Colorado and then he got to Michigan State and made a bunch of money.
Yep.
Like Curt Cignetti cut his teeth. He was at Bama with Nick Saban. He coached in the FCS level.
Yeah.
He coached in the Sun Belt. Now he finds himself in the Big Ten. Like he's cut his teeth. He's a pretty experienced guy. I can't imagine that he's going to go into a season unprepared.
Yeah. One thing to note, and Brian in the chat is talking about NIL and how that's going to limit Indiana. I agree that it'll limit them. If I could maybe push a little bit back, I do think that a season like this is what builds momentum towards better resources for NIL. And that I think that's part of Cignetti's plan, as he's been talking with Indiana officials. The other thing I just encourage you, if you look ahead to 2026, and I think this is part of the keys, can Indiana be a playoff team every year? No, I don't think so. Can they be a playoff team every 3 to 5 years? Yeah. I mean, if you look at their schedule in 2026, it's not easy by any means. It's Colorado State at UConn. They should win both those. Minnesota at home, I think, Minnesota, Northwestern, those are games that they can win. Ohio State at Bloomington, I doubt they win that one. But then you look down the road, Purdue, USC's in a lot of trouble right now. At Michigan, I know that they look to be up and up, but they beat them this year. Nebraska, Rutgers, Washington, like those are all teams that ebb and flow. And I think it says if Cignetti can be consistent and just gradually raise the talent level, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to say, hey, they might make the playoffs every 3 to 5 years, depending. And part of that is the way that schedules are currently. Now, if they go to a division schedule again, which I have to imagine they will after a couple years, then I think that changes. But I think you have to be aware that the scheduling is almost as important as roster management at this point in terms of playoff.
Yeah. I mean, if Indiana keeps doing the, FCS and 2 group of 5 teams in the out of conference, I do think at some point that's going to probably bite them in the butt, right? Like I think you need to add a Big 12 team or an ACC team to the out of conference schedule. Next year, I think it's the same thing. I don't think they have any Power 4 teams, if I'm not mistaken. You have the schedule pulled up. Who's their out of conference?
They're out of conference. I think Kennesaw State was one of them.
Who is FBS now?
Yeah, Old Dominion and Indiana State.
Did you hear the guy that what did he not vote? He didn't vote for the San Jose State guy to win the Bolitnikoff because he had 2 games of 100 yards against FCS teams. And one of the teams he was talking about was Kennesaw State. And everybody was like, buddy, they're in the FBS now. And he's like, well, they were in the FCS last year, so they're basically still FCS. And they're like, no, buddy, they're FBS. Like, it doesn't, you don't get to do that. And he was like, wow. Anyway. But yeah, I've lost my train of thought now. So good job there. No, their schedule. I do think they need to add in some, at least one bigger out of conference game, whether that's a West Virginia like Penn State did this year, or whether it's like what Maryland did by playing Virginia or somebody. Like you have to put somebody else in that schedule to at least give, the impression of, oh, we tried in the out of conference, right? Like I think it was fine for Indiana this year, but going forward, if you keep playing 2 group of 5 teams and an FCS team, which I get it, like that's what Indiana was before. They were just trying to get bowl eligible, right?
Yep. Yeah.
But you're under a new regime now. You got new confidence now. Do I think you're a playoff team every single year? No, unfortunately not. Do I think that you can make the playoffs maybe once every 5 years if the schedule shakes out right and you have a good veteran team? It's possible, but you got to have at least a respectable enough schedule in order to make that happen. But maybe it's 16 teams and you won't have to. Who knows?
Yeah.
So